Hello, Matrix. Today we're going to be having a look at the poem It is a Beauteous Evening, Calm and Free by William Wordsworth. Just to give you a little bit of context about the poem, William Wordsworth was one of the founders of the Romantic poetry movement. Now, Romantic poets were all about praising the beauty of nature because their movement coincided with the Industrial Revolution. And we'll see this quite clearly in the poem that Wordsworth spends a lot of the time praising the beauty of nature and having a look at how it is particularly beautiful in the evening time. It's also important to note that the poem is suffused with a lot of religious imagery because he praises the beauty of nature as it is a direct creation of God. Also, just to give you a little bit of a summary of the poem before we delve in, the speaker finds himself quite awestruck by the beauty of nature, particularly in the evening time. And he's actually in a conversation with what we presume to be his daughter, and he alerts her to the beauty that is around her. But he also expresses to her that even if she doesn't feel this devotion to God, or if she isn't actively praising God in a place of worship, God's presence is very much omnipotent. It is always there. And yeah, he ultimately praises God for the creation of nature and wishes his daughter to be aware of that. In terms of our form and structure of our poem, this is what we would call a Petrarchan sonnet or an Italian sonnet. So it consists of 14 lines, which are divided into an octave, first 8 lines, and the sestet, which are the last 6 lines. And in the octave, he mostly focuses on the beauty of the scenery around him. And in the sestet, he addresses his daughter and looks at the more spiritual aspects of the scene. So I'm going to be using my usual color key to annotate the poem. Just a reminder, diction is our individual word choice. So usually we're going to be looking at things like connotations to particular words. Then when it comes to our imagery, I like to annotate that in green. Imagery is anything to do with figures of speech or more than one word descriptors. Then we have our structure. So obviously our structure is very much going to be focused on the fact that this is an Italian sonnet, but we'll also look at things like punctuation. And then our tone is our speaker's attitude. It's sort of just one tone that stands out throughout the poem, but you'll see that a little bit later. And that's going to be annotated in orange. And then we've got our mood, which is the atmosphere, the feeling that we get as we read the lines of the poem. And that's going to be in purple. So having a look at our first 4 lines, which will be our quatrain, 2 quatrains make up our octave. The speaker says, "It's a beauteous evening, calm and free. The holy time is quiet as a nun. Breathless with adoration, the broad sun is sinking down in its tranquility." So already for line 1, we can see that the atmosphere is very peaceful and tranquil. Our speaker and any person who were to be in the scene would feel completely at ease with no worries or stress. And we get that from the word beauteous. We know that the word beauteous means beautiful, so our evening is very beautiful. Evening is often the most gentle and quiet time of the day because everything is starting to wind down after the busyness of the daytime. And everything is calm and free. So the word free implies that there is no stress or worries or pain at this time. And just from these words, we get the sense that the mood of our poem is very peaceful and tranquil as everything is utterly quiet. In line 2, we have an example of both personification and simile. The holy time is quiet as a nun. And this introduces the religious elements of the poem. So we've got the words holy time, that is referring to our evening. And the evening is compared to a nun that is quiet as she is in prayer and she is feeling particularly close to God at this point. And the word breathless really emphasizes the silence. The feeling of this time and place also takes away the poet's breath with awe at the beauty of God's creation. The speaker also mentions the broad sun. Now, the sun has often been linked to God, as it has always been seen as something quite great and powerful. And as the sun sets, it seems to become this sort of large orange-red ball, and the colors of the sunset seem to stretch across the horizon. That is why the sun is described as being broad. And we'll see that the poet sort of maintains a tone of amazement, awe, and respect as he looks and appreciates the beauty around him. In line 5 and 6, the poet says, "The gentleness of heaven broods o'er the sea. Listen, the mighty being is awake." In line 5, we have another piece of personification. Remember, personification is when non-human things are given human characteristics. And heaven is, of course, being described here as gentle. And this adds to the peaceful atmosphere of the poem. And the gentleness of heaven brooding over the sea is also describing to us the way that the sea is reflecting the skies, or in this case, what the poet sees as being heaven. And the word broods is to brood is to contemplate deeply. So heaven seems to watch over the sea below, and figuratively, this is the speaker telling us that God is watching over the world. And in line 6, the writer says, "Listen." So he uses a command, and the exclamation mark really does intensify it and indicates almost a sense of excitement in the speaker, because he's, of course, talking to his daughter as well. And this very quiet moment is suddenly broken by this imperative order, as the poet wants his companion, which again we presume to be his daughter, to be an active participant in the scene, to notice the beauty around her, to notice God's presence. And we know that he is making a connection between nature and God, because he says the mighty being is awake, and he capitalizes the be in being. So although the speaker is, a little bit more literally referring to the sea, we know that the capital letter is linking the sea to God, the almighty being. And this almighty being is awake. So both the sea and God are awake and eternal, and neither stop moving and being beautiful and present. And once again, we have our tone of amaze, awe, and respect, because the speaker is praising the beauty of nature and the creation of God. In lines 7 and 8, so these are the last two lines of our octave, he says, "And doth with his eternal motion make a sound like thunder, everlasting." So the poet uses the word eternal, so he's telling us that God and the sea are eternal and will go on forever. Remember, he's reminding his daughter that God's presence is eternal. She is never alone, and nature is very much a reminder of that. And we've got a lovely example of alliteration in the words motion make. So that alliteration really emphasizes the thunderous sound of the sea. Again, we seem to have a lot of sensory imagery coming to play in this poem. And in line 8, a sound like thunder is an example of simile. So the breaking waves sound like thunder, and of course this also indicates the power of nature and God. Thunder is often depicted as being the most powerful of natural forces, and the thunderous sound of the waves also contrast with the calm and quiet that we sensed in lines 1 to 3. The poet uses a dash over here, and the dash creates quite a dramatic pause, so he's emphasizing the word which follows, which is everlasting. And everlasting is, again, just emphasizing his final point of the poem, which is that his daughter is always going to be in the presence of God. We are now moving on to our last 6 lines of the poem, so our sestet. And in the first 3 lines of our sestet, we have, "Dear child, dear girl, that walkest with me here. If thou appear untouched by solemn thought, thy nature is not therefore less divine." So the use of the word dear in the lines, "Dear child, dear girl," shows that the speaker is really expressing his love and adoration for his daughter. And he tells her that even if she is untouched, so oblivious to the beauty of nature around her, nature is no less divine. So Wordsworth tells his daughter that although she doesn't seem to have been affected by the depth of feeling in the scene like the speaker has, he assures her that it makes no difference to what is true. Even if she doesn't know or understand it now, she is still made of the same divine material as all creation, and God is always around her. And then in our final 4 lines of the poem, the poet says, "Thou liest in Abraham's bosom all the year, and worshipped at the temples in a shrine, God being with thee when we know it not." In line 12, the poet uses a metaphor. When he speaks about Abraham's bosom, he refers to heaven. And just like a father holds a baby to protect it, the girl, or Wordsworth's daughter, is quite unknowingly protected by God, and he wants to remind her of that protection. And in fact, she is protected by God all the year. So at all times, God is present to protect her. In line 13, the speaker mentions the temples in a shrine, and this is a reference to nature in particular. And what he's trying to convey to his daughter is that even if she does not express devotion to God or spend time in a physical place of worship, for instance, a church, God is always present in nature. That is her constant reminder of God's presence. And in the final line of the poem, line 14, he said, "God being with thee when we know it not." So I'm sure just from listening to me reading those lines, you can pick up on the assonance in that line. So the repetition of the E sound being in being, thee, and we. And that assonance emphasizes his message of God's presence, that God is with his daughter, even if she is not aware of it. And that is the end of our poematrix. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you're able to take some notes and get a better understanding of the poem. I've posted an example of a poetry essay topic, which I think is very accessible. It's only looking at diction, imagery, and tone. Tone will be a very easy paragraph to write on. As you saw from the video, we only stick to one sort of tone throughout, and it's just looking at the appreciation of the beauty of nature and God's creation. I would also love to have some of your feedback on how I've changed things in this video. If you would prefer me to go back to how I normally do my videos when I just have the images of my slides as opposed to me. And yeah, just want to know how I can make these better for you and help you study. And I'd also love it if you would like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And I'll put a link to my TikTok account as well.